Friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again. We've got another podcast and I'm glad to introduce somebody that I've known for a long time, got a lot of respect for the man. It's Tom Pherson, who's the president of AeroTuf. So Tom, lovely to have you on board.
Well, great to be here today.
And it's been a while since we've seen each other face to face, huh?
At least 2 years since I've been on an overseas flight.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? Hey, and how quickly it goes past, huh?
Yes, it does. Especially at our advanced age, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it goes too blooming fast. Tom, listen, mate, this has been a terrible 18 months. But if you look back, I mean, there's been a lot of successes, a lot of learnings, I'm sure. And I know you're somebody who's always looking to improve and innovate and be creative. But if you can just tell the listeners just a little bit about what you do, and more importantly, because it's always impresses me, why you do it. You know, the passion behind it.
Okay. Well, AeroTuf is basically part of Advanced Composite Structures. And this company has been in business for over 20 years now. And we've been on the technological edge of air cargo since we started. For years, we produced what's called the Aerobox. And air cargo can be very simplified or a bit more complex is what you're doing. And our company has always been based around lightweight, very durable materials, and that provided a lower cost of ownership because aluminum containers for years they were heavy, strong, but still you hit them once against a wall or you hit them with a fork truck and they would break. So the company from the very beginning took a different approach to use composite materials that were very impact resistant, very tough. And the general idea was to keep the weight down and keep it out of the repair shops. Yeah. So as we went through this time period, we certainly started with an AKE LD3, and over time, we developed different containers to handle different types of loads, AKP, AKH, ALF, and we also have extended our technology to do composite pallets.
Yeah, right.
And the theory for what we do is basically the same: is to look beyond what's been done, say what are the requirements, and how can we improve those. And this industry, have accepted some of the things. They've rejected other of the things, saying, "Now, boy, we love your idea of a very stiff, lightweight composite pallet, but we lose pallets, we break pallets. It seems like it might be too expensive in this particular arena, even though we know that in general it'll help us out." So that's kind of where we have come from. And we've extended that through into now specialty containers, mainly in the thermal management area for refrigerated type containers, perishable containers for fruits, flowers, different fish and what have you, because we see needs that have been in the air cargo industry that just haven't been met. And we're kind of thankful that's where we are right now, because as in our business, dealing mainly with the commercial airlines, starting, first with some of the political unrest that occurred in Hong Kong that started slowing some of the air traffic, and then followed by COVID. Not too much commercial traffic these days, and so standard containers and what have you have really taken a beating. But we're at least happy to say some of the specialty things that we do are doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, indeed, and please God, may the recovery start coming quickly and quicker as possible. But Tom, one of the things I want to ask you is, and you briefly mentioned it there, but the three big deciding factors, and probably in that order, are cost, weight, and durability. And but it's the cost-driven issue, and it's a shame because for the way they're handled. I mean, you must get so frustrated when you see the way some of the units are handled. And, when you look now at sustainability, so, we don't want to be scrapping, we don't want to be, repairing, we don't want to be doing added parts, etc. Why do you think, and I'm not talking now about people who don't understand, I'm talking about people who are very experienced in business, but why do you think there's still such a neglect of these units on the ground?
Well, there's just really no accountability in what it's done. I mean, if you take your average person that's on the ground, they have a key element, which is speed. I mean, we all have that. And, we have a manufacturing business. Obviously, you want to do things the best and fastest way possible, because that's where your profitability and your competitiveness comes from. Now, when it becomes for us, I can't have people breaking our own stuff, because then we just have to go and repair it and replace it. But in the air cargo business, there's really never been the other side of that equation, except in the companies like UPS, FedEx that have a closed fleet. So with no accountability on the backside, slowing down to protect pallets, cargo, containers, what have you, is counterproductive to what the ultimate goal, I believe, of the user is, which is to move as much as fast as they can, and so they can move to the next one. So it's frustrating, and for us, our business model isn't based on the sale of spare parts, so we don't gain a lot, by having damage on units, and which is why we've chosen a different path, which is to try to keep them from being damaged.
Yeah, but don't you think, Tom? Or, that's just my opinion, anyhow. But I'll see what yours is. Lots of CEOs and lots of senior, especially on the commercial side, they don't take into account the costs and the repeat costs of repair and damage and loss. It's almost as if that's like a grey taboo sort of number that nobody attaches to the cost of sale, and people just tend to be surprised then when it adds up, and then when they look at the numbers of units they've got in their fleets as opposed to what a recommended size should be, it's a little bit of a concern. And then obviously you get the pooling model.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe one of the silver linings that will actually come out of COVID is that, for the last 2 years, basically, cargo and handling of freight was one of the only areas where the airlines, were showing, profit. And so, I've been in this industry, not as long as you, but for 14 years now. And cargo, especially for commercial air carriers, has always been kind of a second thought. That, hey, we're flying all these people. It's great. We're making bunches of money. We have pretty planes. We have pretty airports, pretty aircraft lounges. And oh, by the way, we have a little extra space in the belly of aircraft. Let's see if we can fill it up and make a few extra bucks. Yeah. And I think that's the way it's been handled, intentionally or not. It just that's the way it was. And now all of a sudden it is the main source of revenue for a lot of the typical commercial airlines. They're scrambling to say, how can we make it better? And for lack of a better phrase, I think the eyeballs are now on it where they never really had before, because the airlines were making money without cargo, and cargo just happened to make a little bit more. So this is great. Yeah. And probably people never really looked at those costs. And there was just something published this week, actually, that I thought was pretty interesting, and it's probably a topic for another one of your conversations. But Etihad just signed an agreement with Speed Cargo to optimize their packing, what went in a container, what have you. That wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. Yeah, it wouldn't have happened. So it's good. Some of those things are good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there'll be an awful lot of good that comes out of it, because people will be focusing on every penny that they can save, and they'll start looking at the waste and the unnecessary activities, and everything needs to be simplified. Now, Now, with that in mind, one of the things that I think, and you mentioned earlier about DHL, FedEx, and UPS, using their own standard unit, and they've done a very good job with that. But if you now look at the importance of cargo, the supply chain itself now needs to look at itself and see how it can support itself from within. Because if we don't do it from within, sure as hell, someone from outside, and you look now at the forwarders, you look at some of the carriers, and I say carriers, but some of the organizations that are coming up now and ordering their own aircraft, acquiring their own aircraft, and doing everything themselves. If we don't do something from within, from without, it's going to come very, very quick, and we'll never catch up. Now, with that integration and that supply chain, do you think there's opportunities along that integrated supply chain where people could start to do things differently? And I'm referring now, Tom, back to when we were together. And I think that was Hong Kong, wasn't it?
It probably was.
You never know. Or Singapore, I'm not sure. It might have been Singapore. Yeah. But where I was looking at a load on a vehicle, and I said to you about having Lego units, and having shippers being given the opportunity to load certain units from the beginning, whereby they didn't have to, pack in a certain way for them to be transferred by truck, then the forwarders transport it in, to save all that process time and also packaging, especially now with sustainability principles in place. Surely there's a chance now to be a lot more creative and innovative.
Well, I think, 2 years ago when we spoke about that, I guess it seemed really kind of far out in the future to say, wow, why would they do this? But if you look at what very specialized supply chains like automotive do, they do exactly that. They basically look at what they have to transport, how they're going to transport it, how they can optimize both the packing of it, the moving of it. If you have to return a container, they have foldable, collapsible containers to put their stuff in. And that type of thought has really gone into that. And I think it's time now. And I'm actually seeing this because, frankly, even in our business, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we never talked freight forwarders. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They weren't part of our equation. They weren't part of our business. And now they're looking at this, and they are, as you said, the people that this is their expertise, saying, how can we provide a better product for our customers? And how can we get something from A to B better, cheaper, faster, safer, more sustainably? And these are the type of questions that I won't say all the airlines, because some of the airlines did ask those questions in the past, but now I think the box has been opened up, and it goes beyond something, an air bill showing up at an airline that says, oh, I got to get this on my plane somehow. How am I going to do it? How am I going to put it? And as opposed to now, here's a consolidated shipment. We know that, we're going to be able to do it for less money if it's a shipper.
Yeah.
And get it there faster.
Yep. And some of the big forwarders now, oh my God, they're making an impact, and they want to be in charge of the entire product. So they've also indirectly, but definitely on reflection, they've questioned the level of service that they're getting, and also the level of priority and influence that they've got on that cargo. Because at the end of the day, somebody else can make a decision, and it's their pallet, it's their container, it's their shipment, it gets offloaded. So, the tides are definitely changing, and the if I call it the legacy supply chain, the integration and the support, because if they got it right, they would beat everybody. But it's just getting it right that's so important.
Yeah, and I it's the supply chain has been so spread out. I think it's been hard to do. I mean, again, the key cargo folks, UPS, FedEx, DHL, what have you, that's their business, and they've really focused on getting it right. And I think the changing of the business model, and even in the commercial airlines, I mean, cargo will probably never be the prime business of somebody who carries passengers above deck. But if it moves up a few notches to say, okay, now I got room under my floor. Not only do I want to fill it, but I want to fill it with the most efficient product that I can. I want to make, X dollars per kilo. And I may not be able to make that if I'm just flying mail, or I'm flying this or that or what have you. I want to actually focus my effort in making sure what goes on in the belly of my aircraft, generates as much revenue as I possibly can if I'm paying for fuel and everything else. And that thought process is starting to happen, I think.
Yeah, which is long overdue. And Tom, you've been around to lots of airports as well, and you see the different priority or the different respect that certain airports give to units, because at the end of the day, they've got to be stored somewhere. They've got to be stored carefully, sensibly, and safely for the good of the airport and also the good of the environment and the good of the companies that use them. But it's never really been done well, has it?
It hasn't, and in some airports they actually do a pretty good job. But we track as part of our units. We track repair rates, we track which parts are used, a number of different variables we do, and it all points back to where they were. We actually track where was the last airport that this unit was before, quote, damage was reported. And it's kind of interesting. I won't mention any of the airports because I don't want to hurt any of the feelings, but we all know who they are. But there's some airports that have very large peaks of wait a minute, I have a box that's damaged in Brussels.
Yep.
And where was it last?
Yep.
And if it was in Chicago, for example, you put that mark down and you start finding you have peaks of where it was last, which says in some cases that not only was it probably damaged there, but it was probably loaded on the plane, damaged and shipped to where it was going. And paying more attention to that, it's a safety issue, it's a cost issue, it's a if your job is to get something moving around, moving it fast, and you just want to get it on a plane, you may not take the time to really look at it. I don't know. I'm not there.
But don't you think, Tom? And again, this is just my thoughts now. You've got people like Mitigate now in the pharma, and they're backed by all the pharmaceutical companies, whereby they do lane risk. So people who want to sell it, they can have a look to see. I mean, I think just in general cargo terms, there should be lane risk, and areas that are responsible and producing damages, delays, poor customer service, etc., should be identified. And then shippers should be taking more responsibility for upstream decision-making and influence along with the forwarders as to who they use. And that in itself would start putting pressure on the areas to start making the correct changes, to reflect in what the consumer wants.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It's that data, for all of us who are in the industry, we all kind of know. It's much of it's anecdotal, but it's still there. If you start getting it reduced to numbers where you say, hey, I don't want to fly through airport A because I see a 30% higher damage and repair incidents. And okay, that 30% sounds like a number, but when you start putting dollars and cents to it, it's giant. I mean, the tens of millions of dollars that are spent a year on ULD repair. If you can save 20% of that, you're going to turn some heads. And we fight this battle all the time, and it's not just us, it's the other suppliers, is that nobody ever has any money in their budget to buy these things, but somehow they have money in their budget to repair them.
To repair and replace them. And that's charges, all sorts. It for me, it defies logic. I just don't understand it at all. And like you said, it's a huge amount of money. And if you look at the margins in the business, especially before COVID, I mean, obviously things are a lot better now in cargo, but the way they were before, to get that return on that outlay is a high ratio.
Yeah, I think visibility is a big deal. I mean, if I have a piece of machinery out in my plant that is making 5% scrap, I know exactly what that costs me, and it's going to drive me nuts until I fix it. I may never get it quite to zero, but boy, I'm going to try as hard as I can to get it as close to zero, because I know that that's just money going in a bucket out the door.
Yeah, no, 100%. And something else that the industry knows only too well is the disparity, or the difficulty in getting the right unit to suit one export market, and then getting the return units to support a different export market. So we spoke about perishables and pharmaceuticals and different retail, all the different types of products, but you need different units. And that imbalance, that is such a headache, and it's going to continue to be a headache. So it must be a terrible, terrible thing when you see aircraft with nil fits.
Yeah, no.
That used to drive me mad.
That's exactly
I said, why
right.
on earth would anybody on the ramp especially let an aircraft go with an ill fit?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, it's part of what we're evolving into. I mean, for years and years we've made ULDs. We have almost 40,000 of them flying around the world, but we're starting to say, okay, how can we serve this market better? And again, in terms of higher value cargo, perishables is one of those. So containers that you can fly perishables in one direction and standard cargo in another direction is one way of fixing some of these problems.
Yeah, multi-use, yeah.
Same with, right now, it's been a one size fits all, whether it's aluminum, whether it's composite, some hybrid, it doesn't matter. Here's what we got, see what you can stuff into it. And, again, perishables. Okay, so we're going to put, something in there, either got a lot of ice in with it, then maybe it's fish, or if I can't put ice, I've got to wrap it in thermal blankets that take time to put on. Could last for many, many, many cycles, but they don't, because people just cut them off because they're in a rush. Yep. And so starting to look at the whole picture, and we've even been told on our end of it, well, oh, that's okay, the customer pays for that.
Exactly.
Or the customer pays for damage, or the customer pays for this. Well, gee whiz, if the customer didn't have to pay, say, for a thermal cover, and you still offered the same or better level of service,
yep,
you could put that money in your pocket.
Yep.
And they don't even have to know, because and it's changing that thought process. And COVID has certainly given it a boost, but it needs a lot more driving force from within to say, how can we do this better? There's a lot of flights, and if you can save a few $100s per flight, either on materials, so you save it on sustainability, on fuel, you make something lighter, you don't need as much packaging material or ice or what have you. It's real money.
Yep.
And it's real money that nobody's looking at right now.
Yep. And it's a hidden treasure. Now, as far as specialist units, there's been huge amounts of discussion and debate, and then it comes down to commercial pressure after the initial shock. I'm talking about, mobile phones and lithium batteries, and that recent fire that went round, on everybody's mobile, and everybody's, oh my goodness me. But within a couple of weeks, even if there's no known root cause for that particular issue, people still want to fly the same product. So that appetite for revenue and that appetite for, just turning over the funds to keep the ball rolling, sometimes it oversteps the operational common sense that's necessary. So one of the easiest ways to solve all of this is like, with the fire resistant units, and how long they can actually last, and are they being improved? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, for years, I'm on the committee, the SAE committee, that's worked on setting the specs for this type thing. And, it's a bit of a race. I mean, we've looked at the improvement of batteries, which they're getting better and better and safer, and the improvement of also cargo screening. Yeah, that's getting better and better, and you're trying to figure out where this balance is. Is that obviously the technology exists out there for fire resistant containers. We've worked on it, we have it. The question is the industry ready? I mean, there's been some pretty significant announcements. with Qatar, deciding.
Look at the whole fleet over X amount of years. Yeah.
But on the other hand, is it the right solution at this point in time? You say, well, I don't want to get too technical here, but something is better than nothing. Obviously, resisting a Class A fire is better than something that doesn't resist it at all. But defining the threats and controlling the threats well, if it's a lithium battery, that's completely different from a Class A fire. So deciding as an industry where we want to go, how we're going to, let's face it, if they can't take care of a normal ULD, how are they going to take care of something that really relies on a fairly sealed structure?
Yeah.
A structure with very little damage to make sure that it meets the needs. And so it has to be kind of an industry-wide program to say, okay, here's really what we're doing. Not just that I got a better mousetrap, but I got a better mousetrap, and here's how I'm going to handle it, and here's how I'm going to repair it to make sure that it works the same way that it did the day that I got it. And if you look at, some of the refrigerated containers, the pharma containers and what have you, these are really expensive units.
Yep.
And everybody knows it. Okay. They know what something that has an R in the first letter means. And one would think that they could take better care of those.
Yep.
But they don't. And obviously there's less of them, so there's less overall damages, but probably the percentages are as high or higher. So looking at the entire industry to say, how do we fix these problems, as you mentioned before, I think is a really important thing.
Yeah, and if everybody got together and realised what they could do, because there's certain things that could happen, whereby a specialist unit, there's enough products going in both directions that they could actually do something and start controlling it better, even if those products were maintained by airports, which is something that's a little bit different rather than obviously we got where we're well versed in pooling is obviously the ULDs. Then you've got certain equipment at certain airports, whether it's on a fixed pooling on a stand or complete pooling. But I think now, especially when you go around airports now, and I've been lucky enough to be flying quite a lot recently, but people start noticing the amount of equipment and the condition of the equipment, and also the distance that you are taken on a co-bus, say from the terminal to a remote stand. And everybody now is focusing on waste of fuel, waste of money, sustainability, all this extreme fad that's in there at the moment, where everything from the past has got to be corrected in the next 12 months. Everybody's going really, really overboard on this. So I think there's an opportunity for airports to take more of an influence in what they do for the whole ecosystem, rather than have everybody else trying to do their bit within that airport community. Because the one thing that everybody's learned as well is you've got airlines that will fly in and airlines that will fly out, and some won't come back again. But the airport and the handling companies are going to be there for as long as there's an airport and business there. So, that way of approach, I think, is also leads to an opportunity to improve the outlook.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you have to, as a typical, business, you have to say what's in it for them. And obviously, if you look at ski pool, for example, they put racks in, they penalize people for ULDs that were just laying around or what have you. So they made it, not only a safety issue for the ULDs and safety issues for everything else, but they made it something that's good for the airport. And I think doing that more and more, telling an airport they have to take care of ULDs is kind of a one-sided equation. That all they see is, well, this is going to cost me more. What am I going to benefit from it? So some sort of an overall equation, whereas if they can lower the damage rate, maybe there's a rebate or something else that happens. It's nice to tell people they have to do something, but it's better if you can provide them an incentive of some sort that really means something to them, rather than just say, slapping them when their damage rates are higher. Give them some incentive to make it work better. Because
don't get me wrong, Tom. In the ideal world, it's always better to incentivize and praise. But in the real world, sometimes it's that fear word which is the only motivator to make people change quick enough.
Oh yeah,
and that was so evident, during the early days of the pandemic. But something I just want to ask you about now, because I like the way it's been done and the way it's been presented on your website. So you've got all your different products. So you've got your Aero Box, Light, Pallet, Secure, Firm, and FRC. And I like what you've got on the clear message that's there. Stronger, safer, greener. But it's this seem to be green now that everybody's also looking at, and some of the things that you've got there. So you've got a 10-year guarantee on some of the products, which is obviously good because it lasts longer. It's not being redone, but also the message that you put down about 100% recyclable.
Well, from the very beginning, that has been our mantra as we go through here. It's, our panels they can be ground up. They're thermoplastic, can be remelted and reused. Obviously, aluminum is always recyclable. It's not a very environmentally friendly thing the very first time it's used, but it can be used over and over again. And creating the opportunity to do that is obviously a challenge that's out there too. I mean, it's pretty hard to recycle one of anything because it's just the economics may not be there or a customer may not be there to take it. But we've actually, in some cases, we've brought units that are at end of life back here. We've recycled them, and we continue to do that. And I think it's important as we're going through there to make sure we keep that in mind, and also try to keep the rest of the equation, fuel usage, disposable usage, as low as we possibly can.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said earlier, everybody's talking about now green, and it's great to be seen to be green. But what I think people aren't doing is and everybody's saying you shouldn't fly and you shouldn't do it. It's all the big extremes. But I think one thing to be seen to be green, but it's better if an organization explains what does green mean? Because so many people on the ground can actually influence things that people don't see as the big picture when it comes down to the environment and sustainability. And it's a little bit like when people first started having different bins and different bags, and you think, oh my God, how can they be bothered to put a bottle here and a cardboard box there and whatever it is over there? But gradually as people do it, they get used to it, and they get a certain sense of, I don't know, it's just a sense of pride or a sense of, respect for the planet or responsibility. And I think if people started to focus on the simpler little things, the small things and the practical things that can help with being green, then all the employees would start to take notice of it, and maybe then they would start to do something differently. And when we were talking earlier about, why is there so much damage? A lot of it is training, a lot of it is a lack of awareness, a lot of it is, to a degree, not the correct level of discipline because of pressures, time sensitivity, etc. But if those individuals know what it means and what it does to the planet to have to repair units, to have to scrap them, to have to buy a new one, maybe they'd start to become a little bit more engaged in the bigger picture.
Yeah, no, without doubt. I mean, if we roll back the calendar a few years to 2015. That's when the price of jet fuel was over, $3 US dollars per gallon.
Yeah.
And that got the attention of certainly all of the airline executives, and every single one of them had a program in place. Cut weight. Probably one of the best years we ever had. And same thing with some of the other people who build containers, what have you, because all of a sudden, no questions were asked. We just need to get it lighter and get it out there, save some fuels. And I think you probably had somebody whose job was to make the napkins on the table thinner to try to do that. And they knew exactly what the benefits were of taking some weight out. And I think how you get that same action or that same activity surrounding green, I think, is a big deal. Obviously, weight's the easy one. Every airline has their own equations of how much a kilo costs in jet fuel, so they know that. But everything else, I think, is behind the curtain. They don't know hey, some airlines really love to wrap all their containers with stretch wrap. Some of them love to, put extra packing material in, or a shipper puts extra packing material in because they know it's not going to be handled, perhaps, whether at the airport or on a truck, the best way. So if you can start incentivizing, green rather than just convenient, in the same way, I think it'll be big changes, because it was amazing what happened in those years. I mean, jet fuel is getting there again, but there was such a push that every single thing was looked at. How can I make this lighter? Yes, they attached CO2 emissions to it, but it was all about fuel costs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one way of at least speaking to those that are converted already and letting them feel good about what they can do, and even some of the peer pressure then would also help, and maybe it would bring down some of the unnecessary costs. Tom, what would you like to see happen now in the next year or so that would make a big impact on your side of the business?
Well, I really would like to just see the extension of what started to happen literally in the last 18 months to 2 years, which is treating cargo, air cargo, especially, carried in the bellies of commercial airlines, as a profit center, as to something that can be optimized to say, how can we as an airline, or we as a freight forwarder, deliver better service, better cost, better profitability, whatever it might be. Asking some of those questions that were never asked before, because I think we have a golden opportunity here. I mean, it's come, at a terrible expense, with COVID all the way around, but it has opened up some people's eyes to say, we can do this better, we can be more efficient. And I think there's lots of solutions out there. That's what our company is based around, is trying to provide better solutions. We see more specialization going to happen. I mean, you look down the highway, there's a tanker truck, there's a box truck, there's a flatbed truck. And then even within that, there's specialization on how things are carried safely with as little of labor on the front end and on the back end, and as little of damage. That hasn't really translated well to the commercial air business. And we see the freight forwarders. I mean, 5 years ago, freight forwarders weren't our customers. But now we see them using their expertise to work with the airlines and saying, hey, we can help you do this better. We'll provide a container at your doorstep. You just get it from A to B. That's where the rest. And I think that's the beginning of something that will really start revolutionizing the industry.
No. I mean, that the BUP, the Slack, all those the cocktail pallets, the consoles, they're all things that came about from other crises. Whether they're beneficial financially to the carrier and the handling agent or not is a different matter. But that then throws up the security and the safety element of how well they're doing it with the quality and the qualification and competence of their staff. Which, because at the end of the day, you do a cursory review of a BUP that comes in. It's less price, less cost for the THCs, and then you put it straight on an aircraft. But nobody's really checked it. You're having, whether it's known shipper programs or not, the credibility is questionable. So until we get, some sort of, really, really effective scanner or some sort of a commitment or charter or whatever, it's going to be difficult. Which brings me to when something does go wrong. And we were talking about penalties earlier, people who are constantly undeclared goods, they know, and you've got the e-commerce argument now. The penalties from governments, regulators, etc., are not high enough to be a deterrent.
Yeah, we don't get into too much of that into the business, but you're right. I mean, and they certainly look at it as a cost of doing business, and that's dangerous whenever that happens. When somebody, whether it's an air cargo or other industry, especially in air cargo, because you've got a plane, you've got passengers, perhaps whose lives are at stake. But when you say, well, we know that a certain number of bad things are going to happen, but with the penalties perhaps as low as they are right now, is just the cost of doing business. And it's a shame. And we certainly hope, that the world wouldn't need, fire resistant containers, at least to the degrees that we're all working on and all doing them now, that people would follow the rules, and maybe they will. And we certainly know the batteries are going to get better, but you're right. There is not enough disincentive at this moment in time, or perhaps enough caring out there to make people do it on their own.
Yeah, and I think of all the innovations and everything that's out there, and like you said, I know people have been talking about it for, my God knows how many years. I remember speaking to a couple of groups back in when I think the World Cargo Symposium was in Atlanta, or there was a big conference in Atlanta way back, and people talking about it then. But the fire resistancy, the capability, I think that's going to be such a relief to a lot of senior managers in airlines and handling agents and forwarders, because at least that restricts that overall risk to a manageable level if they're capable of doing what they say they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah. Well, my friend, listen, we've come to the end of it, and I thank you very much for your valuable time. And like I say, it's always a pleasure listening to you, Tom, and talking to you because of your engagement, your enthusiasm and commitment. And just one last question. What do you think would be the sort of back to the future innovation with regards to units or pallets that would be a bit of a game changer if everybody realised, in your opinion? What would your money be on?
Basically, as you had mentioned before, to a degree, modularized, not just shapes, because we are all modularized on the shape. We have to fit into a certain container, but modularized on the cargo and the packing and what have you. So you had a quick in, you had a quick out, you had a quick turn, the type of things that if you were a bean counter, you would say, how can we make this better?
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity to make it better. Some are possible, some are not. But, why do you have to fly back empty containers? Why do you have to fly back empty pallets? What sort of software that could say, well, I'm going to fly a container with crops in it from here to South America, then meat from South America to Europe, and then something, and have that all planned out. I mean, it's a global planning system, similar as is being done in the trucking industry, and now it's just a matter of focusing on that to a degree. I mean, passengers, of course, but this with an equal amount of effort to treat your cargo as a passenger, as opposed to a space filler.
No, I agree with you. And the one good thing is the profile of cargo has gone up in everybody's eyes globally and across all generations. It's it's made people's eyes open as to what's really important and what really does keep the world spinning. So I think everybody that's been involved, yourself and your business included, Tom, well done, my friend. And always lovely to speak to you, see you, and I look forward to seeing you in person very, very soon.
Yeah, we hope to meet somewhere in this world one of these days. So thanks for your time, Chris, and appreciate being able to take part in this.
No, it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Tom.